Good day, viewers. Welcome back to yet another episode of Arattarangetram. Here we have a very special guest with us, Anjana Rajan, and I'm giving a short introduction about her. She has taught Bharatanatyam and folk dances and conducted mime and movement session for theatre artists. She is a visiting professor at New Delhi's National School of Drama and Shriram Centre for Art and Culture, where she conducts practical and theory classes related to Natya Shastra and Abhinaya. She was initiated into Bharatanatyam in Geneva, Switzerland, where she lived as a child. Her teachers included Srimati Malik, Srimati Rajamani, and Srimati Padmani Mohandar. And she trained in Kalakshetra and had the good fortune of coming into contact with Srimati Rukmini Devi Arundale. She has choreographed for productions based on Sanskrit theatre technique with the National School of Drama, and she also works for the English language daily, the Hindu, based in and where her duties include feature writing, interviews, and dance criticism. Her writings have been published in The Pioneer, The Statesman, The Hindu, Pulse, and Horizons, and among others. Welcome, Akka. We are very glad to have you in our show, and thanks for being here. So, with this, we will move to the first segment of our episode today, which is the YouTube segment. So, I'll give it to Raj.
Yep. So for the YouTube segment, the video that I'm going to show today is a clip from this documentary by Louis Malle called Phantom India. He took it, I think it is in 1969, and he took a trip to India in Chennai, and he took a video from in the Kalakshetra school. And in this clip, you'll see two dancers dancing an Abhinaya piece. Their names are Indra Bora and Jayashree Narayanan, and they're learning from Basanta teacher. And the song is called Bala Vinave. I don't think I'm saying it right, but
Bala Vinave.
Is that how you say it? Okay. Can everyone see?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, I think Raj's having trouble getting back.
Did you guys see it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have
what do you guys think? Yeah. I picked this video because I really like that Phantom India segment where you got a glimpse of what Kalakshetra looked back in the old days, and I mean, I went to see Kalakshetra a couple years ago, and it looks exactly the same. Nothing has changed much, but it was a really great video. So Akka, my question was, did you recognize any of the dancers or the teachers in the video?
Did I recognize any of the dancers who were singing, who were practicing there?
Yeah, or the teacher.
Yes. Indira Bora. was the person, no, one person who is still active in the field. One of them is Indiraji. I think this is the name that you mentioned also, no?
Yeah, that's
So
right.
she was very much senior to us, but we heard about her, and later on, when she went back to Assam, she was one of the first people who brought Satriya out into the public consciousness, and performed it on stage and brought women dancers into Satriya. And when we were there in Kalakshetra, we knew of these people like Indraka and others as just our seniors, and we would see in the green room where all the costumes were kept of all the different dance dramas. People had different characters, and once Atte, Rukmini Devi Arundale, had decided when she cast her new dance dramas, usually what happened was that people retained those roles till they left Kalakshetra. Very often it happened that way. So the costumes would be made for them, and the first person uh, who did that role, the first time the drama was produced, that person's name would be written on the costume. So rather than character names, it would be the name of the dancer, because it was very important, fitting and all that. So that way, you see, we would see Indraka's name written or somebody else's name written. So it gave us that feeling of passing on the tradition. We were all very familiar, and then when we came out and we saw them dancing, we saw them in the field. It was a special sort of feeling. So yes, and as you say, we feel the same when we see these old videos on YouTube, or somebody has old photographs, and it does seem that although when I was in Kalakshetra, it was only I joined in 1978. It was already modern times. Now it seems so ancient. But the thing is that it looks so much the same. It fills us with so much nostalgia. And when we see people who are so much older than us, like say the Dhananjayans or um, Subbalakshmi Barua or Indira Bora, when we see those people dancing at that time, we realize that so much was the same. And today you see the Kalakshetra students also, there's a great sameness. Although they are also very, very contemporary, they're different in many ways, because all young people are a bit different from the way that we were when we were young, simply because we just didn't have that much confidence, I think, and we didn't have, it wasn't so normal for us to interact freely with elders. That apart, but that look, there's a Kalakshetra look, I think. It's just so familiar. And that extreme submission and trying to put together your body and soul. I think I can see it in those girls. I don't know if it was there in me or in us, or whether it's, but I'm saying that you can see that there's a way of being which is somehow very Kalakshetra. And people say to me also this, oh, you look like such a Kalakshetra. And sometimes you do certain things, oh, they say that's such a Kalakshetra way of being. I think that is something there in what they teach you about your approach to dance. Maybe I'm not sure, but I think there is a great touch, and as you say, it hasn't changed.
Akka, I think you made a bigger philosophical point, and so did Raj. Like when times are changing so fast and everything around you, like the city I grew up in, the gully I grew up in, doesn't look the same anymore. There's a great importance or uniqueness to things, standing still, not in a bad way, but in a good way. Like, you hold on to that continuity, and it looks the same as before even after so many years. Now it's what, 40 years since you went to Kalakshetra. So it also brings upon the topic of being, keeping intact the traditional, or I don't want to use the word traditional, but something that's been old into the new, so the people of this generation can also grow up in the same way, or at least in the same ethos that you guys did. So talk about how important it is to maybe keep it intact while times are changing.
Yeah, some things, it's true, you feel are worth sticking to. And times, yes, are changing so fast. Everything is changing. Of course, we feel that Kalakshetra has changed a lot too. We can see that it's changed also. Some things are bound to be for the good. We change for the good. And some things drop away. You feel a little regretful that certain things change, but then you can't hold on to it because it's like holding on to sand. No, the tighter you hold it, the more it's going to just slip out of your fingers. So similarly with certain principles. But the thing is that when you meet people who have, it's like, we say, okay, dance, as you say, tradition, it's such a dangerous sort of word. What does it really mean? But it is a flow. And when we see people who have been there much longer than us, like I'm saying, I went in 1978, there were people who were there from the 50s and 40s who are still there today, right? And if we see people like Shantaka Dhananjayan sir, or we see C.V. Chandrasekhar sir, and when we see that they are maintaining certain ways of approaching dance, especially how to approach dance, then you feel very much sort of affirmed that if they are still doing it, they don't have any kind of regret or bitterness. It's so obvious that they are so full of an inner light, having stayed so much the same and yet moved with the times. So you think, yes, okay, if I believe in certain things and I find that a lot of the world doesn't believe in it anymore, but it doesn't matter because it doesn't mean that I'm a loser or that I am refusing to compromise. It means that it's all right, that certain things are worth keeping. This is how I feel, because recently I was in the United States and I met them there, and I went back to the United States after some 42 years. I was just a child when I left the US. I went back there. Even the US has changed a lot and remained a lot the same. So you find that that's a quality of the world, but it's really, so highly connected technologically. It's highly developed. People are, it's like notebook is almost obsolete now. If you say notebook, people only think it means the computer. Pencils and those ordinary things, they're hardly around. And it was so funny that to think that I took classes there for some students, and when you ask them to write something down, nobody brings a pen and paper anymore. They take out their iPad and things and they make notes on that. And to me, that was hilarious. However, what I'm saying is that the Dhananjayans being there and visiting all the time, negotiating those changes, they are still remaining so close to the ethos of Kalakshetra as it was back in the old days. And that's something that is so refreshing. It's like a sari. When people wear a sari today, or I wear a sari, or anybody wears a sari, nobody thinks of it as something old-fashioned. You're not wearing it because you're trying to show what India was like back in the old days. You're still wearing saris, and saris change. I think anything which follows, which is affected by fashion, I think that shows that it's contemporary. So similarly with these dance traditions that we have, people are affected. It's a very contemporary thing. So it's okay to change, it's okay to discuss and to sometimes be bored and want to bring about new things, but certain things just continue. And I think those are the things which are most important. Things which are most important in life are probably the things which are most important in your art. So that's what I feel about remaining the same and also moving. Like the earth, we're standing still, but we're always moving. So
Yeah.
I figure that's what it's about.
Yeah, how much ever the color and the texture changes, it's still a sari, right? So I guess it still remains a sari, remains a sari. So yeah.
So going back to your roots, I want to ask you about your journey as a dance student, how you started learning Bharatanatyam, where you started learning, and how you found Kalakshetra and what your experience was like there.
I started learning Bharatanatyam because I was so attracted to this form of dance. When I was 4 years old, we moved to the United States. We lived in New York City then. And in those days, New York City was it was considered a very, very dangerous place. So we had really strict rules in place how, about going outside, about playing outside, about opening the door when our parents were out, things like that. Even talking on the telephone, it wasn't a safe city. Unfortunately, like Delhi is now, that's how New York was back then. So why I'm mentioning that is that my father particularly, he loved all the Indian arts. He loved arts in general, and he loved artists. So because he was living there, and there were lots of wonderful artists who were coming at that time to New York, passing through and performing. So he would go to see them, and he would take us along, whatever it cost him in terms of effort to take us on the subway trains and going to Manhattan from Queens and see these things. But he took us. So we saw wonderful artists like Pandit Ravi Shankar and um, Allah Rakha Saab, that great partnership that they had. And I was small, so I could only imbibe it. Similarly, I saw some wonderful dancers, and some of them I didn't know their names. I remember seeing some Kathak dancers in Central Park and being so thrilled by it. And I remember seeing this dance drama in which they showed, it was the battle between Rama and Ravana, and how Ravana, you know, like gave up the ghost really, and I still remember that, being so amazed by it. And I would imitate that. I would say, see what they did, that this is what he did, the way he shook, and there was nothing, there were no props, there was nothing. There was just these dancers, and there was this music, and I could see, and I was such an American kid, because if you leave your country when you're 4, it's very easy to. I forgot everything. In 2 years, when we went back, I almost didn't remember anything. And in any case, we were from North India, so you know how the North is quite notorious for being moving away from its traditions. But it comes to you in many different ways. My mother was a very traditional lady. She used to do her puja morning and evening. She still does it, and she would tell us stories. She always spoke in Hindi and Garhwali. She didn't bother, she didn't change and become anglicized when we went. She never wore anything but sari, even in the snow. All these things. So I think they also affect you, these things, in some way. So I knew that this was, say, story of the Ramayana. What I'm saying is that I was really attracted to this. I can articulate it today, but then I was just awed by the fact that you don't need anything. You don't need separate makeup. What we realize today is ekahari abhinaya. You can be many different characters. Similarly, the stage can be bare, but you can create a whole forest. You can create a whole army. You have their weapons. You can see the bows. You can see the arrows flying. You can see their crowns, and you can see the arrogance on the face of those kings, and similarly you can see the fear on the face of that demon who is about to be killed, whatever it is. So you can see those things, and to me I think that was most amazing. So it brought me out of myself, and I wanted to learn this. But New York being what it was then, there were very few Indian people there. It's not like United States now. Everywhere there are so many people teaching dance, but it wasn't like that then. So therefore I couldn't learn. There was one teacher, and that was I think there was one class that was started by Indrani Rahman, or maybe her daughter, but I know that I couldn't go because it was Manhattan, and it wasn't possible for me to go to a hobby class from Queens, so I couldn't learn at that time. And then one dancer was Maya Kulkarni. She was performing then. She was also, I remember seeing Abhignan Shakuntala with her as Shakuntala. It was amazing. So these things they made great impressions on me, but I couldn't learn. When we came to Geneva, it was such a small city and such a spick and span clean city, and it was very safe. And there was one auntie, that was Mrs. Malik, and I don't remember her name because she was just auntie. But I know that she was Mrs. Malik. She used to take Bharatanatyam class, and that's why I was allowed to go, because it was a small place. I could go from. There were other kids who were going from school, so from school we used to go to our house. And so what I feel is that probably if that auntie had been teaching Kathak, or Odissi, I might have just been enrolled in that class because I just wanted to learn. I didn't know what I wanted to learn. Later on, I thought about it. I do feel that, yeah, if I had the choice, I would have gone in for Bharatanatyam. But that's how I started. And it was from day one, it was a very joyful experience for me because it somehow brought me out of myself. I was a terribly shy and awkward kid. I never opened my mouth in class also. In school, I never, the complaint against me, I had two things for which I have been scolded, though I was very obedient. One of those was not raising my hand when I knew an answer. The other thing, that's just because I just didn't, it didn't strike me to participate in discussions. And the other thing was that I never spoke loud enough because it was a lack of confidence. But when I went to my dance class, I never thought about, I never felt awkward, I never felt, or if I went on stage, I was just outside of myself. So that's why I know for a fact that these arts transform you, because I am a product of that. I could never have stood on stage, or I could never have interacted with people I've never met before in my life like this, if I had not been through this experience where it just pulls you out and it doesn't matter because there is something there, you're just pursuing it, and you forget yourself in that pursuit. This is how I started learning. And about coming to Kalakshetra, by the time I got into class 12, I was actually at that time supposed to go to American University. And I really didn't want to go for the simple reason that I had been learning dance by then for some years. And then I just felt that something inside me told me that, you see, here there are lots of your parents, your all the parents' friends. Everybody will say, wonderful, wonderful, well done, sweetheart, that kind of thing. But I thought, I haven't got to what it is. I don't know what it is. I'm just doing something. But I really want to know. I really want to be able to somehow get to the essence. I thought I'm missing something, maybe because I'm not in India. So I really wanted to learn it well and go to its source somehow. And as for Kalakshetra, because of my wonderful, wonderful, the last teacher that I had in Geneva, that was Padmini Mohan Dure, who Dure was because she married Dr. Dure from Switzerland. And she spoke to me about Kalakshetra, and somehow I felt, I don't know what it is, I didn't feel that Kalakshetra was an unfamiliar name to me. I don't know, it can be, some kind of transference in my mind, but when she mentioned Kalakshetra, she mentioned other places, and I remember she told me that in Kalakshetra, she had a student who had once upon a time gone to Kalakshetra, she said, and in 2 years, all she learned was Alaripu and Jatiswaram, but that was really perfect. I remember her saying that. And I remember thinking, though I grew up in America and Switzerland, and it was very much an Americanized, all my classmates most of my classmates were American, but there was no sense of hurry, and to me that sounded perfect. Although with her, I was learning, other things. I thought I knew so much in terms of items, but I didn't mind that idea that, okay, all you learn in 2 years is Alarip and Jatiswaram. So somehow I thought, yeah, I want to go there. And then I applied. My father had come to India and he found out about Kalakshetra, and so we applied there, and I went there, and it was like being, para-dropped into a completely different world. I never expected that, but it's good. If I had expected all those things, I would have chickened out and not gone in. I'm sure I wouldn't, because I had so many other ideas in my head, like, that India is one country, and and India is our country. And I came to India, and I realized that India has so many different countries and so many cultures, and all these things I had been saying, I had to rethink. Except that I didn't regret coming to Kalakshetra, but it was a great challenge. It was a great adventure, and at the same time, I felt somehow this was home. Kalakshetra had it had an incredible spell. It had such an atmosphere, and even when we wept, nobody could have taken us away from there. All of us in first year used to be like this. It wasn't just me. We all, and we would sit together in a circle in the evenings on those sandy grounds out there, and we'd all say. Sometimes we used to cry together. Sometimes we just share and compare notes, and we'd say, we can't say any of this to our parents. We can't write these letters in our letter. That was an age of writing letters. So we said we can't write any of this because our parents will come and take us back. So they can't know this. So we can only share it between us because they can't understand that despite going through such agony, we want to be here. This is where we want to be. And that agony was like, it was like you had to really transform yourself. You had to give up so much to get so much more. It sounds as if I'm saying these terribly bombastic things. But it was at that time we just thought to be able to dance and get the approval of our gurus, which we almost never did, admittedly. But that pursuit was so amazing. That pursuit was enough to, make us want to live another day, although we also thought that I am not fit to live on this earth. I should die because I'm such a bad dancer. And yet, isn't it strange? I mean, it sounds so strange, but this is how it was. For me, that's how it was, and I know for my fellow first years, it was like that. So, on one level, we felt we belong here. This is where we want to be, and this is more. Anyway, we have to die, so we might as well die dancing. It was like that.
How was it transitioning from growing up in either Geneva or the U.S. to going to India, and going to, especially since Kalakshetra is so different from Chennai? How was that transition for you?
And Akka, I know there are a lot of foreign students in Kalakshetra, even now, but even then, so you being one of them, I guess, not foreign, just non-residential, but you must have had like a deep culture shock, like.
Yeah, it was a bit of a culture shock. I'm telling you, because you see, I thought that India is one country. When you live abroad, now it's slightly different again. Because there are just so many Indians there, so they take, there's a Telugu association and there's a Tamil, so there's a Punjab association. Everybody's very split up, actually. But when we were in New York, and also when we lived in Geneva in Switzerland, there was one Indian association, and all the Indians would be together. In fact, all the Bangladeshis and the Pakistani people would also be together. It was a very different sort of, because there were just a few of us. So, and I thought, because I came from a Hindi-speaking background, so I thought that Hindi is my mother tongue, and we were so much at pains when I was a little girl in America, because in America, obviously the children, in kindergarten and first grade didn't know anything much about India, and a lot of people just didn't know. So they all thought that Indian means, the Native American communities. So they'd come up and say, I know your language, I can speak your language. How? So, and then they would say, how do you say this in Indian? How do you say that in Indian? We were so, this thing we used to explain to them, no, there's no such language as Indian, there's Hindi. And I don't think I even bothered, because I was, 4 or 5 years old. I didn't know so many, I wasn't exposed to so much, but I had to be the authority because I was the only Indian in my class. So, I was terribly knowledgeable. We speak Hindi, we don't speak Indian. But I didn't think in practical terms about Tamil, Telugu. And so when I came to India and I landed in Madras, I couldn't hear the difference between Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam and Kannada. It was not, my ear was not prepared for it. That's one thing. And then, so when I heard all this Tamil, it was very complicated. I didn't think that when I go there, I'm sure my mother was thinking, my father was thinking. But they sent me because I really wanted to go. But when I landed there, I found that in Kalakshetra, most of the people were at home in Tamil, and a lot of them were not at home in English either. So it was tough. And the first word in Tamil that I learned was ukkar, because that's what you had to do in class all the time. Aramandi, ukkar. So those kind of things. So it was difficult. So I'm saying I've written about this once, you know, these impressions that I had, that I found myself thinking, you know, does anybody speak Indian around here? I don't know what's happening. And then, you know, Madras being so hot, and I was coming from Geneva, and I really I felt sick also, and it was a tough place to be in. I know that the people before me, the generations before me, those people have had an even tougher time. But for me, to be in a hostel without fans in the heat of Madras was really difficult. And there were no fans, and I learned how to tie a mosquito net. It's a great skill. I really swear by the mosquito net even today. Lovely thing. And I learned how to wash clothes, because it's not that I came from a house where we did housework, but it's different when you live in the West, you know, because you have washing machines, and we didn't have a dishwasher, luckily, so I knew how to wash dishes. But my friends taught me how to wash clothes on a stone. And also what? Sitting on the ground and eating with your hand. And then standing up with holding your plate with one hand, not using both, standing up, and you're wearing a sari, and it's not pinned and things like that, and you have to stand up and everything should be intact, and you're in full view of the entire dining hall. All these things, when you think about it, you know, there's a lot of practical training there, which doesn't and does, you know, both. It is connected and it's not connected to the dance. It's actually, so all these things went into, you know, all those adavus that we did. It's not just a dance class. So it was a bombardment of everything. And then on Fridays we used to have bhajans. And our hostel warden, everybody was such an amazing person there. They were all Gandhians. They were all stalwarts of something or the other. They had done things like marched for, you know, against violence in schools. They would go singing bhajans and all. We used to hear all these things. They would go singing bhajans and then stand in front. The boys would be beaten in class, so they would all rush in front of the boys and you know, protect them from being beaten. But there was a lot of, you know, the main thought in Kalakshetra was about non-violence, about vegetarianism, about tolerance towards each other. So these things, and a great respect for all the arts. So everything about you had to keep your room neat. So learning how to do, you know, the jhadu pocha, all those things. All those things were so much a part of being there in Kalakshetra. And getting up in the morning and then doing exercises at 5 in the morning, and then having your bath so many times a day, and then rushing for prayers, and nothing happened without prayers, and everything was this little bell, small bell, big bell. They were all bells, and you had to recognize them. And then there was so much etiquette. You can't sit in a room where the gurus are there. Not only that, even when they're not there, you can't sit on the ledge where they normally sit. We didn't do it. So many things were instilled in us. Maybe they were not so good. Maybe they make you frozen inside to an extent. So you have to learn to break out of it too. And you have to learn not to expect the new generation to do those things. So what I'm saying is it was an education from all sides. And then languages and sharing and learning to let your emotions go. That was another very important thing that I learned, because I do feel that in the West, the culture is very different. So even though I grew up in an Indian family, a very Indian family where we spoke Hindi, we learned to write Hindi, all those things. But still, when you are surrounded by that kind of a culture, you learn to close your emotions off. In India, we are always declaring everything. We wear our emotions on our sleeves. And this is what, in Bhava, you have to do that. You have to be able to portray everything. Whereas I think the Western approach is a little different. You're much more reserved. So if you're feeling terrible, you'll keep your face composed. And if you're feeling very happy also, you won't go and hug the next person without, you know, some kind of a preamble. But you have to break that down also if you want to get in touch with yourself. So all these things were a part of that education, directly, indirectly, half directly.
Yeah, I think I have read somewhere that Rukmini Devi Arundale's vision was not just to create beautiful dancers, but also main thing was to make beautiful human beings. So that they can appreciate and be sensitive and like whatever you were saying, like a holistic, wholesome education that everyone got there.
So I want to share the next video that we have. It's just a brief video, and I think
Is
it's one of...
Akka still with us?
Hello.
Akka, are you there?
I think she's frozen.
Okay.
Let's come back with the next segment. Or
Okay.
let's come back with a new video.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Raj.
Should I start the next?
No. Let's end this session and then start the
Oh,
next
so
session.
go off air. Go off air.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll meet you viewers in the next in the next section. Bye.
I wanted to share was a black and white video of Rukmini Devi Arundale giving a class, and I think it's one of the few videos of Rukmini Devi actually dancing out there. Let's have a look. Can you guys see?
Yeah. We,
Can you guys see or no?
Yeah. Did you start playing it?
Yeah.
no, we see the folder.
Oh. Wait, hold on. There we go.
Yes. No.
Hmm.
Alright, we'll come back to it while Raj works. Am I echoing?
Raj, put on the headphones.
Hello?
Yep.
Okay. Akka, can you tell us, have you had any experiences either learning from or watching or getting some input from Rukmini Devi ma'am? Has she like dropped in on classes when you guys were there? Because you're the first guest we have who has probably interacted with her.
Oh, I see. Yes, she was there all the time when she was active. All the years that I was there, although she was old, she was very, very active. So what I mean is, when she was there, she was the absolute authority. And even though we were learning from the senior teachers, her senior disciples, sometimes she came to prayers, and to classes, I think in our classes she only dropped in rarely. She came to prayers and she took the exams, and then she always directed the dance dramas. So she would be there at the rehearsals. So one always learned from her. Sometimes there might be some event outside, some kind of function, and then she would speak, and she used to speak very. She was very pithy. She didn't bore you with a lot of platitudes and all that. She had a very practical approach to everything. She had a very soft voice, but I and most people, I would say, we were very terrified of her, because she was really she was a great perfectionist. She really knew what she wanted, and I've come to feel that people who are geniuses have less patience, with the rest of us who are not geniuses. So that way, she was a little short. She wanted you to understand, and also she didn't want people to be afraid of her. There was such an aura around her. So she really preferred it when people were natural. That's why she was very good with children, because children are not scared that way. But we were at that, teenage kind of this thing. So I remember being really terrified of her. But what I'm saying is that she was always a teacher. She was always teaching you something. And her views on dance, she had such aesthetics. So she taught you these little things, and sometimes it was just such a tip. The teachers always would tell us that when she came for exams, I mean, we were just like I was just, almost unconscious with fear. But what I'm saying is that they would tell us, the teachers would tell us that Atte, we all called her Atte, that Atte would scold them and tell them, why, don't make them feel nervous. Don't you know how they feel? They're very scared. So really what she wanted to know was, were we learning properly? And she wanted everybody to dance beautifully. She had a great, beauty for her was something to be worshipped, And if you, it all the good qualities, all the sattvic qualities, everything to do with devotion, it was all wound up in beauty. So therefore, that's why she didn't like it if you did a careless adavu or something, or if you did it wrong because you just weren't able to do it right. That would, she couldn't stand it. Sometimes she would, just say, "Ayo, don't show me that. Just go away." That's why she scolded, because she couldn't bear it. She couldn't bear something ugly. This is my feeling. So we had this chances to learn wonderful things from her. When I was there, I didn't learn lots of things like directly. She didn't take class, but for example, she was composing. That one year, she was composing songs of Swati Tirunal, because she had been asked to do this by the palace in Travancore, and she composed Dashavataram. And again, I would go quaking with fear, and she would be. But the way she thought, she'll think about it, and the music teachers will sing, and then she'll create an adavu, or she'll put 2-3 adavus together, which today I can appreciate, with this distance in time, I can appreciate, oh, this is what she did. And sometimes she would say, no, this is not it. The little subtleties of bhava, sometimes she would show, this is what you're supposed to do. And the other great thing that I remember she taught me was that in one of the exams, she asked us something about, the relationship between hastas and bhava. So I always used to think that I was always struck by this, that you can use the same hasta to depict so many objects, verbs, so many different meanings it can have. So in answer to some question, I said that the hand gestures show the meaning, and with your bhava, depending on the meaning, you change your bhava depending on the meaning that you want to give to your hasta. And I remember she laughed and she said, no, it's the other way around. She said, bhava is from inside. Hastas just help it along. And it just said everything right for me. It was such an eye-opener for me. Yes, that's what it's about. That is why they say that bhava comes from the heart, no? Bhavayati iti bhavaha. It's from inside. It is what occurs inside your heart. If it's not there, you can't bring it out on the face also. And what would the use, what would your hand gestures be of any use if you didn't have that seed of the bhava inside you? So this kind of thing she would tell you, and she was so precise in what she said. So this was that way, and she was very friendly. But so I feel sometimes now that if I were not such a fearful person, but then everybody's different. That was my personality. I am rather fearful by nature. So if somebody is very authoritative, I tend to be cowed down automatically, whether they've said anything to me or not. I'm like that. So I feel if I had not been so fearful, I would have got much more by being in her presence. But she was very kind-hearted in some ways, because there were other people also around you. Sometimes, because as I said, the etiquette. If you're sitting, say you're sitting outside with your friends, but teachers walk by, any teachers, maybe Atte, it could be any of the other, but you'll always stand up and say namaste, even if they pass you by 5 or 6 times. You keep standing up and saying namaste. So similarly, sometimes we would be just helping in the green room, because the art festival was going to start. So there were a lot of things for the juniors to do, helping. Gluing things and stitching things and all that, carrying things back and forth. So we would just be helpers. And I remember once in the theatre, I was doing something, and Ate was coming off the stage. Probably she had been watching a stage rehearsal and she was coming off the stage and I was face to face with her. So I just said, Namaste. I just kind of, Namaste Ate. And one of the teachers behind me said, didn't you say Namaskaram to Ate? So I would have been tongue tied. I wouldn't say anything, but Ate said, of course she did. She smiled at me. It was so nice, I thought. What I'm saying is that she surprised you with those little things sometimes. That we had this feeling that she's so unapproachable, but actually she was very approachable. And sometimes she would ask you things like, if you go to do programs, there would be folk dance programs and dance dramas, and they would go to different places. We went on local tours and things like that. So one day we went, we found out that Ate is in the prayer hall, and we were all going to get into the bus to go somewhere. So one of my friends said, Ate is there, let's go and meet her and do namaskaram to her before going. So we went and met her. So she said, oh, you're all going to there, whatever place it was we were going. And she asked us, you do like going there, don't you? You like going to programs. So it was so, you felt very touched by this, that she was really concerned. It was not for us, it was like, if Ate says to go, it's an honor for us to go. But she really cared about those little things. So she was a great enigma, I think, like all great artists are. She would fly into a rage and the next moment she would be herself like a very soft person. And if we saw her outside, because, if we thought that, oh, let's slink by without, her noticing, but she always noticed. So that she would call everybody, and especially the hostel girls, so she'll say, oh, you're all going away without saying hello to me. So she was like that. She was strict at the same time. I know she was different with different people. So other people who were much senior to us, our gurus, have had sustained training under her. And that must have been something very, very different. But for us, even to be, what I'm saying is, even to be there in her presence was a great education for us. I mean, the saris she wore and the things that she noticed, amazingly, yes, I remember this also. What? I would have been maybe only in second year maybe, and it was art festival time. So in art festival time, the things we used to do, it was a very friendly, very in Hindi you would say gharelu. It was a very, very domesticated atmosphere. So because we were not the ones who were dancing, we were juniors. So what would we do? There would be this canteen. So we'll be sitting up all night making packets of these peanuts and these sweet chickies and this and that, and then they will be sold in the canteen the next day. So we used to be on that kind. We'd be on canteen duty. We would be selling the brochures or sitting with that kind of thing. So I remember once again, I ran into her like this. I mean, I was so cowardly, but when you ran into her, you had to say namaste and all that. So what she told me was, I was wearing, and we all used to wear our best saris for the art festival. Every day, 10 days in a row, there would be programs. And I remember I was wearing a Dharmavaram sari. It was magenta with gold. So what she said to me was, I liked the sari you were wearing yesterday. Because that sari was a very unusual sari. It was completely woven. It was a cotton sari, completely woven. I don't even know which state it was from. It was either from Andhra Pradesh or something. It had a very unusual weave. So she noticed it. Though she was the director of this entire art festival, all her artists were dancing. And she noticed one puny first year or second year, whatever it was, standing there with the peanut packets in a nice sari that she liked. The next day she says, I like the sari you wore yesterday. So this was her eye for beauty.
Yeah, I think she had an eye for detail, and she made sure that all her productions had that, even to the minute things. So everything was like, she wanted kind of like the beauty to show out and be perfect in that sense. Yeah.
Yes, and eye for detail, absolutely. She used to come and correct even the small things like what they call, the side bhava. That is, the hero and the heroine maybe interact, or some major scene is going on, but there are so many people who are standing around. They could be just, the curtain bearers or the people who are doing the fan and things like that. So what they do, how they interact among themselves, that also she would look into and tell you about.
I think, yeah, Raj.
Raj, play the video because
Yeah,
he's
we'll
not
see
in
the
the
video and
discussion.
then we'll continue the questions.
You guys can see it, right?
Yeah.
Rukmini founded the Kalakshetra dance school in 1936, and Sharada Hoffman became one of the first students. Ever since, the classical dance drama Bharatanatyam has had a protector in Rukmini Devi.
Bharatanatyam, what we call Bharatanatyam, would have died out. There would be no Bharatanatyam. There would be something else which would call itself Bharatanatyam, but she retained the purity, the classicism, and knowledge of the art.
Akka, I have a question for you before Raj comes back. Oh, he's back.
Raj back. Okay, Raj, go ahead.
Raj, do you want to ask her something?
Oh, I was gonna talk about how I was gonna ask you how you transitioned to Delhi and the dance scene there. How is it different from the one in Chennai and your experience with it?
Okay, I actually have a question still on Rukmini Akka, so I'm going to go first. Akka,
Sure.
I have this notion that people who interacted with Rukmini Devi have a certain perception of her versus people who have not interacted with her, and these two perceptions are very polarizing. So can you see how that is, and can you shed some light as to, at that time when you were in Kalakshetra, how did all those people who did not interact with Rukmini Devi, did they also have similar, because now it's history, so we all look back at it with 2020 vision and all that. But at that time also, was she equally polarizing to people who did not know her, and they thought that she is taking control of Bharatanatyam or whatever? So I think people who interact with her see her differently than people who have not, and see her as a authoritative figure in taking all the reins in Bharatanatyam, or monopolizing it or whatever.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure. Maybe because see, I didn't grow up in Chennai, and I don't have, I'm not from that background as such. So when I went, I was in the hostel, and I was quite steeped in that, and we didn't even used to go out of the hostel much. But this much, I would say that um, I heard about the great debate. Over one adavu, the seventh adavu, whether the Garuda Mandalam, whether the knee should be above the ground or whether it should touch the ground, this kind of thing. Because, Bala Saraswati, this we heard about, because they would do it in that way, and the Kalakshetra way was different.
So I'm clarifying, it's the seventh Natadavu.
The knee, bending the knee or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know how you stretch your leg out in the back.
Right.
So for us, it was you stretch your leg out and your heel should be pushed forward. So it's like a very sleek posture. It's like aerodynamic. Whereas the other way of doing it is it's like a step.
Yeah.
Your leg is in a right angle. Your knee is placed on the ground. So what I'm saying is that there was this great debate over that, which is the right way to do it. I heard about that even as a student. We did hear about this, and then today, one, perhaps you're referring to these polarized views. Like some people say that Kalakshetra, the approach to Abhinaya is very sanitized. They use this word sanitized, that she sanitized Shringara. I don't know whether you are speaking about that particularly. When I also asked some people about this, but I think that if anybody thought that, I didn't hear. But the thing is that the person, the tradition of the Devadasis, that was, Bala Saraswati represented this wonderful old tradition, and she's still held as the greatest person that we know, who's closest to our time, who represented that. But what she did was certainly not anything which Kalakshetra would have disapproved of, which Atte would have. They all believed in subtlety. So I don't know why this debate has come up. They all believed in subtlety, because subtlety is just a greatness in your art. I don't think it's about throwing your hands around or in flinging your emotions out like that. So at least I don't think I really ought to comment, because I have not heard when I was there as a student, or all those years that even later when I was in Chennai, I heard about it many years later. Let's say like it's in the last maybe 12 years that I've heard about this kind of debate and this term that was used about sanitizing the Abhinaya. Maybe, the other thing is, what I feel is, she may have done, I think there's a great need today to look into what happened to the original, the original practitioners of this art. Whether, talking about the style is one thing, but what happened when it got popular and it got this acceptance, by the great middle class of India, and the so-called high society accepted this art, that was okay. I think it was high society in general that took over the art from the original practitioners. I think it would have been much nicer if they had been also taken along in that flow, and they could have continued and been accepted into high society, middle class society. But what happened was that somehow they seem to have fallen by the wayside. So there are very few people. How do we know? What did they do? They just kind of left the art, and people who are doing the art mostly now are those who have all the, the they came from the upper echelons of society. So that is what I think we need to look at today. But at that time, if at all, people like Rukmini Devi Arundale were um, keeping out, sir, if they were editing, I won't call it sanitizing, if they were editing, then maybe they were doing it so that people would not reject the art out of hand. Today we can take a lot of liberties and go back and say, I will do this kind of padam. I think it's very human, and why should I be afraid to, or why should I hesitate to explore the various facets of the human mind or the facets of the psyche? Why should I not talk about all the the spectrum of emotions that comes to me in Shringara? But in those days, because it had been so marginalized, because it was so stigmatized, maybe she was purposely editing things out so that at least it would get a foothold. And it did become popular. I think today, if we are in a position to talk about it, to debate and say that I want to do this, and who are you to tell me not to do this, I think it's because at that time she steered it out of a kind of a morass. But this, what I'm saying about the original practitioners, that I feel that we as a society have not done them justice.
Yeah, I think what you have touched upon there is a very broad and hot topic, like why the traditional practitioners' descendants are not did not go into that, or why very few of them remained, and not everyone is like continuing what it is. So so I had the same question when I was speaking with another person who is also interested in dance history, like Mr. B.M. Sundaram, and he was saying that when he was writing his book, and he went on to hunt for these like look out for the he's basically a musicologist, and he writes about dance history as well. And when he was writing his book about Devadasi's genealogy, and then the Natuvana's genealogy, he had published 2 books. When he was looking at it, he had very difficulty in locating them, because their descendants would not even know that someone in their family was a dancer in such and such temple. I mean, it was a fact that was hidden within their own family, because there was such a stigma attached to it. And so I think that is also probably like one of the reason why not not all of the traditional practitioners dissonance took it up and then moved forward to till this current age. Only few of them really stuck around and really did what they're doing now.
No, that's true. But because there was this reformist zeal, it could have been. But then this is the thing we see, as Shubha said, that today we can see that all in perspective. At that time, nobody seems to have thought that if it's okay for girls of so-called good families to dance, then why is it not okay for these people also to dance? So let them also continue and let them flow with society. Instead, we just removed it from there and brought it into a more acceptable part of society. That's what I'm saying. It's not something that one can undo today. But yeah, so this is why. So they stopped. It could have been another way. No, it could have been that because dance became acceptable, so they became respectable once more.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So they needn't have hidden it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So moving on. So after Kalakshetra, when did you move to Delhi? And again, talk more about your experiences moving to another city and the culture there, the art culture there.
Yeah, I moved to Delhi when my parents came back to India. By that time, my father had retired and they settled in Delhi. Then I came, and by that time I was really at home in Kalakshetra, so and in Chennai, at least what I knew of Chennai, what I knew of Madras. Um, and then I came to Delhi, and I didn't like Delhi at all because it seemed such a terribly. What can I say? It was such a.
I know what you're conveying, because the first impression of Delhi of me was not a good one.
Very rough, and nobody's bothered, and somehow graceless. Such a graceless city, I felt. And it's not a good. It's a very impersonal city, and Madras, I guess, yeah, there's a difference. I've seen that now because I've been a little bit in Bombay, and then I've been in in Bangalore. I've been in other cities. There's no place where everybody becomes very hard and harsh in Delhi. So I found that I didn't feel comfortable here. But one thing I did discover was that two great things about Delhi was that you had Mandi House, where all the, that was the theatre district then. We didn't even have India Habitat Center, but Mandi House with all the auditoriums, and it was a very beautiful part of Delhi as well. That was the first place that my father drew me a map also of the Mandi House roundabout and all this, the street, the roads that came out with all the names, so I had them by heart. Now the metro has come, so things are changing again, but that was one thing that made Delhi bearable. And then places like India International Center, where the programs were always free and lots of good programs happening. So very quickly I realized that you can find your niche in Delhi, that it's a place where you, like New York in the old days, you could get to see so many great artists. You had to be clued in, and you could get there. So you had to get yourself there, but it was possible. And I moved around a lot. So soon after I came, I learned how to get onto those buses, the DTC buses, which is.
Yeah, so for those who don't know about Delhi's buses, here is a preview. So in other cities, the bus stops are meant to be the places where the buses should stop. But in Delhi, the buses will not stop. They will be rolling. So you need to learn how to get on a moving bus and get down off a moving bus. And we learned it as kids when we were in Delhi, and it was like my mom learned it, and it was like a big thing in the family. Hey, my mom knew how to get onto a rolling bus. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah, all that. I remember the first day I went to Mandi House and came back to Saket, I was congratulated by my sisters-in-law and various people. They were, oh my goodness, you did that. It's
That's
terrible.
a long.
The
That's a
things
long
we get
distance.
used to. Yeah.
So, following up on what Raj was asking is like, after you move to Delhi and you have this um, a great environment like Kamani Auditorium, Triveni, then Mandi House, and then IFCO Auditorium, and then all this in a very geographically close place. So, what were your thoughts about the dance scene in Delhi then, and then the dance scene that's in Delhi now?
My thoughts about the dance scene in Delhi then as compared to now.
Yeah.
I think it was. That was. I suppose that when I came to Delhi, it was mid '80s, and it was definitely a vibrant scene. Yamini Krishnamurti was still performing, and Sonal Mansingh, because she still performs, but they were like still the two main dancers, and they did certain things like they became like landmarks of the year. Like they would do their January 26th program. They would do a special program that related to India, in Republic Day and things like that, because there was a certain whiff remaining of that pioneering zeal. This is what I feel when I look back to it now.
Okay.
Now people have become much more individualistic, and in terms of Bharatanatyam, the Margam was still going strong. People were still doing the Margam and following that trend that had been set, in the 50s and 60s. People didn't question and try to do new things for the sake of newness. They were doing different things. They were also, for example, it had become very multicultural, Bharatanatyam. You could compose in many different languages. People were composing in Hindi. All those things they were doing. But it was, I would say, in some ways, it was an innocent time also. It was Delhi had not seen the riots, that happened in
84
after Indira Gandhi's assassination. And that really changed Delhi and Mandi House for a long time. And somehow we've never recovered from that, because in those days, what we should not, it was just a pogrom. It wasn't even riots as such. It was a pogrom, and people were horrified and shocked, and they just 8 o'clock on a winter evening, it was just nobody would be out. It was ghost town. So when I first came to Delhi, it was that during the winter there would be, Mandi House was so alive even at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, midnight, because concerts would be going on and there would be so many artists performing one after the other. So if you didn't have a problem in the sense that you didn't have to rush home for some reason, or you didn't have a curfew, people just stayed. And you could also go, from Kamani you might rush to Triveni if something else is on, or sometimes things were happening in Himachal Bhavan, because they were all round that roundabout. But after this happened in 84, they just stopped. People stopped even going to programs, or they would have programs, so everything would be over by 8. It took a long time, I feel, to get over it. And even today, now there are programs, they go on till 9 or so, but everybody has that feeling that we've got to get home. It's no longer, for various reasons, safe, and you don't feel comfortable. So that has changed for good. I don't suppose it's coming back. A different kind of culture is coming now, I think, and that is the culture of Baithaks is coming to Delhi.
Mm-hmm.
Music conferences at home, people having their home concerts and exchanges in different pockets of the city. And that's a really nice thing that is happening. It's so scattered that people are beginning to understand that maybe it's not worth it. If you want people, it's not that people in Delhi are not interested in culture, they don't want to come to programs. It's just so physically difficult for them to get there. Logistics is so tough, and they have so many duties, and life is difficult. So it's sometimes more satisfying to organize a concert in a neighborhood, in a smaller area. All the people of the neighborhood will come. Whereas they wouldn't all be able to rush to Kamani or Shriram Centre or even to Habitat Centre and places like that. So that change, I think, is happening now. there are more places where you can perform in smaller circles. And going back to the change in performing arts like Bharatanatyam, where everything is so much more international and digitized, and so much more collaboration happening. There was a little less of it, I would say, in the 80s. It started later. This was my impression of of the scene back then. I didn't think that this place is less exciting.
I think Aka's video got stuck, I think. So, Shubha, we can't hear you.
Let's go off air and meet in the next.
Okay. Okay. See you viewers in the next part of the same episode. Bye. And Aka will continue from the point where we left in the earlier section.
Akka was discussing Delhi culture back then and now in terms of art scene.
Yeah, so what I was saying was that when I came, although I found that Delhi was a harsh city and it was hard to commute in, but back then I realized, and I still feel that today, that you can always find your place here in this city, and there's so much to be found in terms of culture. So that is a great thing. And when I look back, I think that Bharatanatyam and all the arts have become much more probably cosmopolitan now, because there's so much more exposure. There it was at that time, there was still less exposure because we didn't have internet and YouTube and all these things. There were exchanges happening. People were going and coming, and it was just taking longer. And also people were, I think, more committed to the margam than they are now, because things change. You can't help it. We question more and more as we get more and more comfortable. So all those things are there. And then the other thing is that it's good that Baithaks are happening, because many of us, like I am very concerned that everybody should be able to have that taste of art in their life. And it's so great to be able to have it within a radius, because it's not only that life is difficult, the logistics and all those things, but I think that lots of people are very unwell, unfortunately, because of lifestyle problems, and so they can't go very far. And so that also, if you can have things nearby, so I think more possibilities are coming up for that.
Also, Akka, is there any very contrasting qualities about Chennai and Delhi in terms of audience or dance reception or art in general or perception towards art or outlook towards art?
Yeah, I think on the one hand you can't generalize. You're talking about then or now, generally?
Now.
No.
I think that now, again, because people move around a lot, so there was a perception, that everybody in Madras is very knowledgeable about the arts, and when you perform in Madras, that you'll have a very knowledgeable audience. But I don't think that's the case anymore necessarily. So, because I've been during the season also, when they, the great cliche in Madras is that even your auto drivers will know what Raga Balamurali Krishna is singing and things like that. They'll all be very interested, but it's not the case anymore, because I know I have such a bad sense of direction. I can never direct the auto people to whatever sabha I want to go, and they've never heard of the sabhas, most of them. So there's a lot of migration happening everywhere within India. And similarly with the people who go to the concerts, they may be interested, but they may not necessarily be very knowledgeable. So in that sense, probably there's a more similarity now in the audiences in Delhi as well as in Madras. But what I've seen in the performance scene is also that people are becoming really so obsessed with the idea of of displaying skills rather than going deep into the art. Sometimes that's rather disappointing and it's rather boring if you watch lots of people, because then everybody becomes the same. Uh, this problem I saw more in Chennai than in Delhi, simply because there are so many more dancers, probably they are young dancers, and the way that the season is organized in Madras during December and January, it's like a railway timetable. So everybody gets there half an hour or 20 minutes, and they're all, if you don't, take careful notes, they're all a blur in your memory. Everybody's the same because everybody feels that they have to live up to certain expectations, but they're not looking inside and saying, what is it that I want to say? Or what is it this art is saying to me? So I think that in that sense, Chennai might be a little bit, what can I say, more mechanical than I have seen Delhi to be. I might be wrong again, it's my perception.
Okay, we move on to Madana's question.
Yeah.
Okay, Akka, I have a question for you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Yeah, so you're married to GS Rajan, who is a very accomplished flautist. He accompanies a lot of nationally and internationally acclaimed dancers. He goes on tours with them. How do your synergies play together at home? Does his musical point of view add a complementary dimension to your point of view, or do you have exchange of ideas at home? How does this work?
Yeah, we exchange ideas. Rajan's whole family is into music. His father is a very, very accomplished musician. His mother is an accomplished musician. So I learned so much by getting married into this family. One thing was that in Kalakshetra, in any case, we were always taught that music is the soul of dance. So we were brought up with a healthy awe of musicians. So, and I know that they are great music. They're steeped in classicism. I've learned so much about about ragas, about raga bhava, and stories about musicians, especially from my father-in-law. From Rajan, what I've learned is more, Rajan earlier, like, it's a very different equation when you get married. Um, so there are so many other things that are happening, in life. You're trying to organize your life, and you got a family, and you're managing all those things. So it's not always so idyllic that you get to talk about music and, and dance and things like that. However, what I'm saying is, what I learned from Rajan is the way that he played. I've seen his music develop, because he was also just a young flautist when I married him, and I've seen him go deep into his music. I've seen him do his sadhakam, and his approach to music and how it changed. And he's very different from me, because, as I said, no, I am rather a fearful type, and he's very fearless, and he doesn't bother about what people will say. He's very open in his views. He says all kinds of things sometimes just to provoke people. So the kind of the development that he did in his own music, changing to the big flute, and his approach to raga, his approach to alapana, I saw him doing that in practical terms. And I've always felt, then I saw him composing, and his composing, the kind of the sort of fusion music that he does, and then the classical kind of compositions that he does. I've seen those things happening at home. So one thing I did feel was that I could somehow, as a dancer, I felt that I could get into that music. I've always felt good about composing to Rajan's music, composing dance to Rajan's music, orchestral compositions. And also I felt that if I have if I need music for some production, and he does the music, I feel that he understands it without having to spell out everything. I have a great trust with him that he's going to come out with the music that I can work with. So in that sense, it's been very comfortable with him. And as I said, I learned a lot, and I can always trust him. I can always trust my father-in-law because they are steeped in classicism. If I have any kind of doubt, sometimes you want to experiment or you want to do things, and then you ask, is this the right approach, or do you think this is what it means? So it's very nice to have somebody who can corroborate it for you. And of course, he has his very outspoken views on dance as well.
So has he accompanied you on live shows?
Yes.
How does it feel when he's on the orchestra? Do you feel more like someone who's supportive being on the orchestra? Does that help you perform better?
Most of the time, yes. I mean, I've been lucky with most of the people who have been in my orchestra. And probably now with a certain amount of maturity, and also you come to a level of understanding with your spouse also. So that's good. But I must say that whatever we may have had, it takes a while, I feel, for human beings to understand each other. And also I think artists, because artists are volatile, they're hypersensitive. You have that aspect in you. Everybody does. So sometimes when two people like that come together, there can be a lot of sparks. But when it came to stage, I think that we had a good understanding that way. So as you said, yeah, I felt supported by him, and he has so much bhava in his music that appeals to me. So that I find he's not that kind of musician who'll just play by what they call chitte, So it applies to dance also. So it's really nice when you can hear that if you're trying to do something and he supports it with the way that he plays or the in-between parts that he plays. So it's very inspiring. So especially for bhava, I would say it is very supportive.
Aka, he is also from, and not just being a musician and you being a dancer, but he's also from Kerala, and I think you are from the north side originally. I didn't get a chance to ask where you are from as your origins. Is there also some kind of, I mean, you guys must have met in Kalakshetra, am I right?
Yeah.
So, was there a cultural...
Shubha, we lost you for a second. Yeah, can you repeat the question?
Sorry. Yeah, I was asking, was there a cultural exchange on those fronts as well, that he was from Kerala and you were from the northern side? And please tell us where you're originally from.
Yeah, I'm originally from Uttarakhand, Garhwal.
Okay.
And that was actually quite, it was a little difficult, but it was Kalakshetra that was the bridge, you see. So that's why our sort of lingua franca has become Tamil, even though his mother tongue is Malayalam. But we speak Tamil at home. With my in-laws also, I speak in Tamil.
Oh.
So that was because of Kalakshetra. And if I could fit in somewhere into that family, that was the reason. It's not, it's not always, as I said, idyllic. You have to try hard, and both sides, I think, we all had our difficulties. We all had to adjust a lot, because after all, Kalakshetra taught us a lot of things, but then, it didn't really teach us how to cook. And, and the things that I learned, most of my cooking I learned from my mother-in-law. She had to teach me, so I learned all that part of it, which is a very Kerala and South tinged approach. And some stuff I had learned only by watching my mother, which is very different. So one has to, in that way, my knowing Tamil would have been a big help, definitely. And also my Tamil has improved after I got married because I speak much more of it. Whereas earlier it was just, yeah, we spoke Tamil as friends in the hostel. That was our lingua franca. But people are surprised, and it's quite hilarious also that people say that my Tamil sounds really that I speak Tamil with a Malayalam accent, and they think that's because I'm married into a Malayali family, but actually that's not the case. I asked Rajan also. I said, "How can it be? How can I have picked up this Kerala accent in just a month or two of marriage?" And then he was pointing out that in Kalakshetra also the Tamil is very Kerala-fied because there are so many artists from Kerala there. So all these things which I was never used to in my life, which has been a little different. I went to New York, I went to Geneva, then I landed in Kalakshetra. I was originally from Garhwal. It's quite ridiculous. So a lot of things, I'm glad also, have escaped me. So I didn't know about these differences about, you know, Malayalam flavored Tamil and things like that, and that also has its politics.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Akka, you being like a from Gadwal and originally from a Hindi-speaking family, and Bharatanatyam being a very South Indian dominated dance form. Have you ever felt that you don't? It's not your original language, or would Kathak have been better, or any language barriers when you were learning dance?
Language barrier was originally there when I went to Kalakshetra. As I said, I had to learn Tamil, but some parts of the culture. The thing is that what I discovered when I was in Kalakshetra, I struggled to understand those things. Those bhajans that I was telling you about, that also teaches you so much. It was compulsory. We all had to attend. The hostel students, everybody had to attend those Friday bhajans. But you learned about the bhajana sampradaya. You learned the order of in which the deities are invoked. And then also we used to go, those in early days, my early days in Kalakshetra, the bhajans used to be in the temple, a very old, the Marandishwara temple in Tiruvanmiyur, which is a very old temple. So that also you imbibe that atmosphere. Then you find out, what are the days for the different deities, and what I'm saying is that the culture became very strongly ingrained in us, and that was not just what you might call the Tambram culture. It was also something. It was uh, drawn from the ancient culture of India, classical India, that classical culture. So when I had become steeped in that way of living, then I discovered that I could be at home in other parts of India as well, because I think that those are the things that link us in this country. So in fact, I was not born in Garhwal, I was born in Delhi. So I had been to Garhwal only as a baby, and then I went back after I had finished at Kalakshetra and come back to Delhi. Then we went back to Garhwal, and I felt that I was really at home there in those houses. In Garhwal, they have those clay houses where if the house is closed and there's no fire lit inside, the house tends to fall because it needs the heat of the fire. Things like that. What I'm saying is those things were very natural to me. So I felt so at home there, but I thought the reason for that was that Atte's Kalakshetra had taught me to be at home in India. So that link I got from Kalakshetra. I think getting married is a different cup of tea. It's a very practical test of all the things that you believe in. So though it was not 100% easy, but it was not something that I needed to regret or that I really needed to unlearn or relearn things.
I think we had a Madana's question let out another interesting facet of a dancer and a musician in the same family. I think it's time for us to wrap up this particular segment, which went on to 3 parts actually. So, Akat, thank you for joining us today, and we will continue in the next section, the other 2 segments of the same episode. So, viewers, please look out for our blog, YouTube, and Facebook for further announcements, and do send us your comments and feedback on episodes about how to improve it, or if you have any brickbats to throw at us, please do that also. We are ready to face it. Okay. Thanks, Akka. Thanks for
And
joining
thank you,
us too.
Akka, for staying up so late.
Yeah, it's very late
Thank
in
you.
India. Yeah. See you
Great
guys.
honor. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Thank
Akka.
you.